Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and write a comment. This will help promote the video. Enjoy watching. The world was a playground of textures. Cool dewdrops on grass tickled my bare feet as I crouched, peering through a gap in the fence. The scent of wood smoke mingled with honeysuckle, a familiar Sunday morning symphony. Beyond the fence, the town bustled. Cars hummed like giant bees, their chrome reflecting the rising sun. "Don't get too close, honey." Mom's voice drifted from behind. "Remember what Dad said?" I glanced back at her, her face etched with worry lines. "But Mom, they have a bakery with those swirly sugar cookies." "They have cookies in our town, too," Dad chimed in, joining us behind the worn-out fence. "Besides, you know what your grandma says about the big bad city?" I scoffed. "Grandma lives on a farm with chickens. This is different." Dad knelt beside me, his gaze fixed on the bustling town square. "Maybe one day, when you're older," he said with a sigh. A yearning tugged at my chest. The town, with its towering buildings and hidden corners, felt like a forbidden adventure. Every Sunday, the same routine played out. Fence peek, parental warning, daydream of exploring the unknown. The smell of burnt toast wafting from the kitchen signaled breakfast. Disgruntled, I turned back towards the house. The familiar comfort of home couldn't compete with the allure of the mysterious town looming across the fence line. Years flew by in a blur of scraped knees, mud pies, and endless games of hide-and-seek with the neighbor's dog. Each stolen glance at the town fueled my desire to explore it. College, a city scholarship, and a career at a bustling newspaper finally granted my wish. The ink-stained city lived up to its name, grimy, chaotic, but undeniably captivating. My job as a junior reporter kept me on my toes, chasing stories and deadlines. Today's was a doozy. The city's mayor, known for his squeaky clean image, was rumored to be involved in some shady dealings. "Hey, Greenhorn." A gruff voice startled me from my note-taking frenzy. I looked up to see Bob, the grizzled veteran reporter, leering at me. "Word is, the mayor's gone missing." "Big scoop, eh?" My stomach sank. My boss, the man who always pushed me to work harder, was sick. Tonight, I was all alone on this story. That night, armed with a flashlight and a notebook, I ventured into the murky underbelly of the city, following a trail of whispers that led me to a rundown warehouse. Footsteps echoed in the damp darkness. Fear, a prickling sensation I was used to, crawled up my spine. A sudden shadow loomed, hands grabbing for my bag. Adrenaline surged, fueled by instinct. A struggle ensued, a tangle of limbs and muffled shouts. In a desperate move, I shoved the figure with all my might. A startled cry, a sickening thud, and the world went silent. Days bled into weeks. The hospital became my prison, the white walls a constant reminder of my freakish condition. Doctors poked and prodded, baffled by my lack of pain response. Newspapers reported the mystery jumper, speculating wildly about my motives. One afternoon, a familiar gruff voice boomed from outside my door. "Greenhorn." A jolt of energy coursed through me. Bob, my gruff but kind-hearted colleague, had managed to cut through the red tape and visit me. He lumbered in, a bouquet of wilting lilies in his hand, a stark contrast to the sterile surroundings. "Looking like a pale imitation of yourself, kid," he rumbled, setting the flowers on a nearby table. I tried to smile, but the grimace felt unnatural. "Thanks for coming, Bob. How's the story?" He sighed, pulling a chair closer, stalled. "Nobody believes you weren't a jumper. Why'd you lie?" I didn't lie. I rasped, frustration gnawing at me. "There was a mugger, and I fell." Ob leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. Mugger. Now that's a new twist. You sure about that? I nodded fervently, desperate to make him understand. Yes, Bob. There was a shadow, a fight, and then nothing. He scrutinized me for a long moment. No pain. You mean, even with the fall, you didn't feel a thing? I shook my head. Nothing. It's like I'm numb. The news seemed to hit him hard. His gruff exterior softened, replaced by a flicker of concern. But you can't just sit here doing nothing, greenhorn, he said, his voice softer than usual. I know, I croaked, the frustration finally finding its voice. But without the pain, how can I tell them the truth? How can I chase a story I can't even feel anymore? He patted my hand, a surprisingly gentle gesture. You're a reporter, kid. You don't need pain to find the truth. You just need the will. His words, a spark in the darkness, ignited a stubborn fire within me. I wouldn't let this condition become my prison. I would find the truth, not with pain, but with my mind, my instincts, and maybe, just maybe, with the help of a gruff, old reporter who still believed in a greenhorn reporter with a strange story to tell. The world tilted violently. Blinking away the stars that exploded in my vision, I realized I was falling. A horrifying free-falling sensation followed by a bone-jarring impact sucked the air from my lungs. Pain. I expected a symphony of it, an orchestra of agony. But there was nothing, just a strange numbness radiating from the point of impact. Panic clawed at me. I couldn't breathe, but I wasn't sure if it was because of the fall or the absence of pain. Help! I rasped, my voice hoarse. It echoed eerily in the night. My vision swam, the darkness punctuated by flickering streetlights. My body felt heavy, unnaturally so, like I was encased in lead. Footsteps crunched on gravel. A hazy silhouette materialized above me. Relief washed over me, weak and tepid, like watered-down coffee. Someone's down here. A woman's voice called out. Another figure joined the first, their faces obscured by the shadows. Looks like a jumper, a gruff male voice said. Closer now. Call an ambulance. A wave of nausea rolled over me. Jumper. I croaked, the word catching in my dry throat. No, My voice trailed off. I tried to explain, to tell them I wasn't crazy, but the words seemed to get lost somewhere between my brain and my lips. Then, blessed darkness enveloped me. The sterile white ceiling swam into focus. A pungent antiseptic smell filled my nostrils. Beeping filled the silence, a steady rhythm that seemed to mock my disarray. My body felt foreign, heavy beneath a stiff white sheet. A woman in a blue uniform materialized beside me, her smile strained. You're awake. That's a relief. They said you were lucky. Lucky. I wanted to scream, to tell her how wrong she was. But my voice seemed to have deserted me completely. Don't worry, honey, she continued, seemingly oblivious to my silent struggle. You'll be fine. Just some bruises and a broken arm. My throat rasped. Pain, I croaked, the word emerging like a rusty bolt. The woman frowned. Pain? Of course, you must be in pain. We'll give you some medication right away. But the medication didn't help. It did nothing. The nurse checked again, confusion etching lines on her forehead. Finally, a doctor, a wiry man with bushy eyebrows, rushed in. You're the jumper, he asked, his voice laced with skepticism. I shook my head, frustration simmering in my chest. No, I managed to gasp out, my voice raw. He examined me thoroughly, his frown deepening. He muttered something about a medical anomaly and a freak case. The term freak echoed in the cavernous silence of my mind. I was no freak. I was a reporter, and there was a story out there, waiting to be unearthed. But how could I chase it without the one thing that fueled every investigative instinct? The sting of pain. Discharged from the hospital, I returned to my tiny apartment, a stranger in my own skin. The once comforting sounds of the city, honking horns, distant sirens, now assaulted me with their harshness. The vibrant colors outside my window seemed dulled, muted by my emotionless state. Bob, true to his word, became my unlikely ally. He dug deep into the files of the mystery jumper, piecing together a timeline of my movements on the night of the fall. Together, we revisited the deserted warehouse, the scene of the struggle and my subsequent fall. The place reeked of dampness and decay. Sunlight barely pierced the grimy windows, casting long, menacing shadows. A shiver ran down my spine, not from fear, but from the unnatural chill permeating the air. "Anything look familiar?" Bob asked, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. I scanned the room, focusing on the faint memory of the fight. A glint of metal caught my eye, half hidden beneath a pile of crates. I pointed towards it. Bob rummaged through the debris and pulled out a dented switchblade, its sharp edge glinting menacingly. This was tangible evidence, a silent witness to my story. But it wasn't enough. We needed a witness, someone who might have seen the struggle, heard the commotion. Bob, ever resourceful, tracked down a homeless man who often frequented the area behind the warehouse. The old man, his face etched with the harsh lines of a life lived on the streets, listened to our story with rheumy eyes. Then a flicker of recognition crossed his weathered face. "Yeah," he rasped, his voice raspy. "Saw two figures scrapping around that night. Didn't see much, just shadows. Then one of them went flying." His voice trailed off, a tremor running through his thin frame. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. With a witness testimony and the recovered weapon, we could at least present a more plausible story to the police. Yet there was still a nagging doubt gnawing at me. "Bob," I said, my voice low, "why was I investigating the mayor in such a deserted place? It doesn't add up." Bob stroked his chin, his face thoughtful. "Maybe he had something stashed there," he mused. "Something he didn't want anyone to find." My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Could uncovering the mayor's secret be the reason for the mugging, the fight, and ultimately, my fall? The lack of pain had stolen the fight out of me initially, but now a new kind of fire ignited within. I wouldn't let this become just another story. This was personal. This was about finding the truth, even if it meant navigating a dangerous labyrinth without the familiar guidepost of pain. The newsroom buzzed with controlled chaos. Bob, with his usual gruff demeanor, barged through the door, me trailing behind like a ghost in a sea of clattering keyboards and barked orders. The mystery jumper story had taken a turn, and the editor, a woman with a steely gaze and a nose for controversy, was all ears. We laid out the pieces, the witness account, the recovered switchblade, and my connection to the missing mayor story. Skepticism hung thick in the air, a familiar weight I was starting to get used to. A witness who lives in a cardboard box, and a reporter with a newfound aversion to gravity. The editor remarked, her voice drier than dust. Compelling, but hardly conclusive. "There's more," I interjected, a newfound resolve firming my voice. "There has to be a reason someone tried to hurt me in silence whatever I was digging into." Bob nodded in agreement, his gruff voice softer than usual. "She's right, Sarah. This kid might be bruised and broken, but she's got guts. And maybe, just maybe, she's onto something." Sarah, the editor, considered us for a long moment, the silence broken only by the frenetic symphony of the newsroom. Finally, she sighed. "Fine," she said, the word laced with a hint of begrudging approval. "You two dig deeper. But be careful. Stepping on powerful toes leaves nasty bruises, even if you can't feel them." With a newfound purpose coursing through my veins, I dove back into the story. The mayor, a man known for his squeaky clean image and philanthropic gestures, suddenly seemed to have a darker side. His connection to the derelict warehouse, the location of the mugging, was a tangled web of shell companies and shady land deals. Days blurred into nights as Bob and I chased down leads, hitting dead ends and dodging evasive spokespeople. My lack of pain turned out to be a double-edged sword. While I couldn't feel the fatigue gnawing at my muscles, the constant emotional strain wore me thin. One night, exhausted and defeated, I slumped into my chair, staring at the flickering computer screen. "It's no use," I mumbled, frustration thick in my voice. "We're chasing shadows. Maybe there's no conspiracy, just a crazy homeless guy and a clumsy fall." Bob, who had been scurrying microfiche readers all night, looked up, his gruff face etched with concern. "Don't give up, kid," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "You wouldn't have come this far if there wasn't something fishy going on." He was right. My instincts, honed by years of chasing stories, still whispered a truth needed to be unearthed. Even without the physical reminder of pain, the knowing desire for justice wouldn't be silenced. We would find the truth, no matter how deep we had to dig, no matter how many powerful toes we stepped on along the way. A crumpled note, scrawled in messy handwriting, became our beacon in the sea of dead ends. It arrived one rainy afternoon, tucked amongst the usual stack of bills and flyers. "Meet me at the docks, midnight. Info on the mayor's dirty laundry. The Owl." Fear, a tingling sensation I hadn't felt since the fall, prickled at my skin. Midnight rendezvous with anonymous sources. This was a dangerous territory even for seasoned reporters, let alone a walking medical anomaly. "We have to go," I declared to Bob, thrusting the note towards him. My voice, despite a tremor of trepidation, held a steely resolve. This could be the break we've been waiting for. Bob studied the note, his brow furrowed. "The docks at midnight. Sounds like a scene from a bad crime novel, kid." "And the Owl? What kind of alias is that?" "Desperate times call for desperate measures," I countered, a newfound determination fueling my words. "Look, we're getting nowhere with conventional methods. This could be our only shot." After a long contemplative silence, Bob finally sighed. "All right," he grumbled, a hint of resignation in his voice. "But we stick together. No heroics, understand." The docks, shrouded in mist and the eerie glow of sodium vapor lights, were a desolate landscape of towering cargo containers and the faint scent of salt water. The air hummed with the distant whine of a ship's horn, creating an unnerving symphony of industrial solitude. A lone figure emerged from the shadows, a dark silhouette against the moonlit sky. We approached cautiously, hearts pounding a frantic rhythm against our ribs. "Are you the Owl?" Bob questioned, his voice gruff yet laced with caution. The figure tilted its head, a flash of something glinting off a silver ring. "The information you seek requires a fair exchange," a raspy voice replied, distorted by the damp night air. "What kind of exchange?" I asked, stepping forward, the fear a dull throb in my chest. Silence. The Owl croaked. "You expose the mayor's secrets, and I disappear. No names, no traces, just the truth delivered." We exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between us. This was a gamble, a dangerous one, but the truth, the story we had been chasing for weeks, hung in the balance. All right, I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my limbs. We won't reveal your identity. Just tell us what you know. The owl stepped forward, revealing a woman shrouded in a long black coat, her features obscured by the darkness. Her voice, when she spoke, was a low murmur filled with a sense of urgency. The warehouse, she began, her words punctuated by the distant creaking of a ship's anchor. The mayor was storing something more valuable than land deeds. A shipment of illegal chemicals, enough to poison the city's water supply. My breath hitched. This was bigger than a corrupt politician and shady land deals. This was a potential citywide disaster. When? Bob rasped, his gruff voice barely audible over the pounding in my ears. Tonight, the owl whispered. The shipment leaves on a freighter by sunrise. If you want to stop it, you have to act now. The information, a chilling truth cloaked in darkness, sent a jolt of urgency through me. Fear, the phantom sensation, morphed into a different kind of fire, the fire of a reporter determined to expose injustice, a fire fueled not by pain, but by a yearning for the truth, a truth that could potentially save countless lives. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, a stark contrast to the usual emotional numbness. We raced through the deserted docks, Bob at the wheel, his face grim under the flickering headlights. The owl's words echoed in my mind. A toxic shipment, a city at risk, sunrise as the deadline. Where are we going? Bob barked, weaving past a maze of towering containers. The freighter, I shouted back, clutching the tattered note with numb fingers. The owl mentioned Pier 13. Pier 13 loomed ahead, a skeletal structure silhouetted against the first blush of dawn. A colossal freighter, its hull adorned with a foreign flag, dominated the dock. Panic clawed at my throat. Time was running out. We can't possibly storm a ship, Bob said, his voice laced with worry. We need backup. Call the authorities. No time, I argued, the urgency in my voice surprising even myself. The owl said by sunrise, we have to do something, anything. Before Bob could protest, I threw open the car door and sprinted towards the pier. He grumbled something about reckless reporters and followed close behind. Reaching the dock, we found a lone guard slumped against a crate, a discarded cigarette smouldering at his feet. Relief flooded me, momentary and fragile. Bob, with surprising agility for a man his age, disarmed the guard, securing his weapon with practiced ease. Stay here, I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my dry mouth. I'll try to find the shipment. He grunted in agreement, his gaze fixed on the unconscious guard. With a deep breath, I disappeared into the labyrinthine metal belly of the freighter. The stale air hung heavy with the smell of diesel and rust. Each creak of metal sounded like a gunshot in the silence. The ship's layout, a maze of corridors and hatchways, disoriented me. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden danger. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A figure scurried around a corner, a glint of metal in their hand. My heart hammered against my ribs, not with fear, but with the thrumming rhythm of determination. Who's there? I called out, my voice echoing eerily in the cavernous space. The figure hesitated, then stepped into the dim light. It was a young man, his face etched with desperation. In his hand, he held a wrench, a futile weapon against the forces at play. You here to stop them too, he stammered, his voice raw with fear. Who's them? I asked, curiosity warring with the urgency of time. The mayor's men, he blurted, his voice barely a whisper. They're loading the chemicals onto the ship. This confirmed the owl's warning. This wasn't just about corruption, it was about potentially poisoning an entire city. Anger, a hot ember in my chest, flared into a burning resolve. "We have to stop them," I declared, the words ringing with a newfound conviction. The young man, his name was Jake, looked at me with a mixture of fear and defiance. "We?" he scoffed. "There's two of them, and one of them's got a gun bigger than my head." "We improvise," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "There has to be a way to alert the authorities or at least delay them." The clang of metal on metal echoed through the corridor, growing louder with each passing second. Time was a relentless tide pulling us towards an uncertain future. "Follow me," Jake whispered, grabbing my arm and dragging me towards a narrow passageway. We squeezed through the tight space, emerging into a dimly lit engine room. The rhythmic thrum of the ship's engine filled the air, a constant reminder of the looming deadline. "This leads to the control room," Jake said, pointing towards a metal door. "Maybe we can disable the engine or send out a distress call." Hope flickered in my chest. It was a desperate gamble, but it was the only one we had. Together, we pushed against the heavy door, our combined weight finally forcing it open. Inside, a burly man with a gruff face sat hunched over a console. He looked up at us, his face hardening into a scowl. In his hand, a pistol gleamed menacingly. "Intruder alert," he roared, his voice echoing in the confined space. Panic surged through me, a cold fist tightening around my throat. But then, something unexpected happened. Jake, with a desperate cry, lunged at the man, knocking him off balance. The gun clattered to the floor, skidding across the metallic surface. We scrambled for the weapon, a chaotic dance punctuated by grunts and the harsh clang of metal on metal. Just as my fingers brushed against the cold steel, a searing pain lanced through my shoulder. I stumbled back, a gasp escaping my lips. For the first time since the fall, I felt pain. It was sharp, agonizing, a white-hot shock that radiated through my entire body. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. Had the fall finally broken the numbness, or was it the surge of adrenaline from the fight? Whatever the reason, the pain, even though excruciating, felt like a strange sense of normalcy returning to my body. But there was no time to dwell on it. The larger man was regaining his footing, a murderous glint in his eyes. Using the last vestiges of my strength, I lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. We grappled in a mess of flailing limbs, the sounds of our struggle blending with the thrumming of the engine. Finally, with a desperate heave, I managed to overpower him, pinning him onto the cold metal floor. "Don't move," I yelled, panting from exertion, my voice hoarse from the pain. He glared at me, a torrent of threats spilling from his lips. Yet behind the rage, a flicker of fear flickered in his eyes. With trembling hands, I grabbed the discarded radio. "This is a distress call," I choked out, my voice raw. "Ship en route to..." My voice trailed off. I didn't know the destination, but it didn't matter. We had bought some time, a chance for someone to hear our plea, a chance to stop a citywide disaster. The air in the control room hummed thick with the scent of burnt wires and acrid sweat. My shoulder throbbed with a dull ache, a constant reminder of the fight and the sudden return of pain. Yet the agony felt distant, overshadowed by the looming threat of the chemical cargo. "Are you all right?" Jake asked, his voice laced with concern as he helped me off the struggling man we had subdued. "Just peachy," I rasped, surprised at the normalcy of the words despite the throbbing pain. "Except for the fact we need to stop this ship and explain to some very confused-looking authorities why we're covered in grime and holding a hostage." A faint sound, a rising whine, cut through the tense silence. We rushed to the window, peeping out at the bustling dock. Police cars flooded the pier, their flashing lights painting the scene in a kaleidoscope of red and blue. Heavily armed officers swarmed the ship, taking control with practiced efficiency. Relief washed over me, a wave so powerful it nearly brought me to my knees. We had done it. We had stopped the shipment, exposed the mayor's corruption, and potentially saved countless lives. The control room door clattered open, revealing Bob, his face pale but etched with relief. He took one look at the scene and let out a long, exasperated sigh. "What did I miss?" he grumbled, weariness lacing his voice. "Just another day at the office," I replied, wincing as I tried to move my shoulder. "Except, this time with bonus pain and a hostage situation." Bob's scruff demeanor softened. He stepped forward and clapped a hand on my back, the contact strangely reassuring. "Crazy kid," he muttered, his voice filled with a mixture of annoyance and pride. Sirens wailed in the distance as the authorities apprehended the mayor's men and secured the ship. The rising sun cast a golden glow over the scene, a stark contrast to the dark secrets we had unearthed. As the officers led away our prisoner, Jake walked up to me, his face etched with a newfound determination. "Thanks," he said, his voice sincere. "You didn't just stop a shipment. You gave me the courage to fight back." I smiled, a genuine smile that stretched across my face. Maybe the fall wasn't just about losing the sense of pain. Maybe it was about finding a different kind of strength, a resilience fueled by something deeper, something that even the absence of pain couldn't erase. The story, it seemed, was far from over. I had a feeling this was just the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where pain, or lack thereof, was just one aspect of a much bigger journey, a journey to find the truth, no matter how deep the shadows, no matter how much it hurt. The hospital room was sterile white once again, but this time the starkness felt comforting. The throbbing in my shoulder, a constant reminder of the fight, was dulled by a steady drip of painkillers. Bob, ever the loyal colleague, sat by my bedside, a newspaper folded in his lap. "Front page," he announced, his voice gruff, but holding a hint of amusement. "The intrepid reporter who can't feel pain foils citywide poisoning." I winced not from the pain, but from the embellished headline. Intrepid. Try reckless with a side of near-death experience. "Hey," Bob chuckled, "you were brave, kid. And that kid, Jake, he wants to thank you properly. Said he's dropping by later with some decent coffee, not the hospital swill." A genuine smile spread across my face. Jake had become an unexpected ally, a testament to the unforeseen consequences of chasing a story. This wasn't just about exposing corruption anymore. It was about the impact, the ripple effect of one story triggering a chain of actions. The doctor, a kindly man with twinkling blue eyes, bustled into the room, his clipboard clutched in his hand. "Ah, our mystery patient." He greeted me with a smile. "The tests are in." My breath caught in my throat. The lack of pain had been an enigma, a constant shadow looming over my recovery. Would they finally have an explanation? Well, the doctor began, his voice gentle. "Your case is certainly unique. While there's no physical damage to your nerve endings, there seems to be a dampening effect in the pain perception center of your brain." He explained the technical jargon in simple terms, how a combination of the fall and my pre-existing resilience to stress had created an unusual neurological response. "It might be temporary," he added, a hopeful note in his voice. "Or it might be permanent. We simply don't know." I stared at the ceiling, a kaleidoscope of emotions swirling within me. The lack of pain, a terrifying void initially, now felt like a curious quirk, an anomaly intertwined with my newfound courage. "So," I finally asked, my voice husky, "does that mean I can't be a reporter anymore?" Bob snorted. Don't be ridiculous. You survived a mugging, a near shitjacking, and a mayor's goons. Pain or no pain, who's going to stop you? He was right. The lack of pain might have taken away one element of the chase, but it hadn't taken away my drive, my curiosity, or my determination to expose the truth. Just promise me, the doctor said, his voice laced with a hint of amusement, to be a little less reckless next time. I chuckled. No promises, Doc, but I'll try. As the doctor left, Bob leaned closer, his eyes twinkling. So, Greenhorn, he rasped, what's next for the reporter with the unusual pain threshold? I grinned, a sense of purpose rekindling within me. The truth, I declared, my voice firm and clear. Wherever it leads, pain or no pain, I'm going to find it. Sunlight streamed through the dusty office window, casting long shadows across the cluttered desk. Days had blurred into weeks since the hospital. The throbbing ache in my shoulder had faded, leaving behind a faint memory of the fight and the bizarre turn of events. The mystery reporter case had become a local legend, with news outlets milking the lack of pain angle for all it was worth. My inbox overflowed with requests for interviews, all of which I politely declined. Fame wasn't what I craved. It was the chase, the thrill of uncovering the truth, a feeling that, thankfully, hadn't been dulled by my unusual condition. Bob, ever the supportive colleague, plumped down a steaming mug on my desk. Coffee, he declared, his gruff voice softening. Strong enough to wake the dead. I inhaled the rich aroma, a familiar comfort. Thanks, Bob. So, what does the gossip mill say about the disgraced mayor? Bob chuckled. He's toast. Career over, facing charges. Turns out, the chemical shipment was just the tip of the iceberg. They found all sorts of shady dealings lurking beneath the surface. Good riddance, I muttered, taking a sip of the scalding coffee. Though the story feels unfinished, there has to be more. Bob raised an eyebrow. More? You stopped a citywide poisoning, exposed a corrupt politician. What more do you want? Something doesn't sit right, I admitted, tapping my pen against the desk. The mayor might have been the puppet master, but someone was pulling his strings. A flicker of understanding crossed Bob's weathered face. You think there's someone bigger behind it all? Maybe, I replied, the hunch tingling like an itch, demanding to be scratched. The warehouse, the shell companies, the chemicals. It all points to a larger operation. Silence descended upon the room, broken only by the rhythmic tapping of my pen. A new story was forming, a thread weaving its way through the fabric of the previous one. This time the stakes felt higher, the enemy more elusive. All right, kid, Bob finally said, his voice tinged with apprehension. Let's dig deeper, but be careful. These shadows are deeper than you think. I grinned, a spark of excitement igniting within me. The lack of pain might have changed the way I felt the chase, but the thrill of the hunt remained. With Bob by my side, and a newfound resilience fueling my every step, I was ready to delve into the darkness, no matter how deep the shadows, no matter how high the stakes. The truth, elusive and fragmented, was waiting to be unearthed, and I, the reporter with the unusual pain threshold, was determined to find it. Days turned into weeks as we chased phantoms down rabbit holes. The mayor's downfall had opened a can of worms, revealing a network of shell companies and shady financial dealings. But the trail leading to the mastermind behind the toxic shipment remained frustratingly cold. It's like chasing a ghost, I grumbled, staring at a wall plastered with newspaper clippings and cryptic notes. There are traces, whispers, but no concrete leads. Bob, hunched over a dusty microfilm reader, grunted in agreement. We're missing something, kid. a key piece that ties it all together. Frustration gnawed at me. The lack of physical pain hadn't dulled the sting of hitting dead ends. In fact, it magnified the frustration, the relentless pursuit of a truth that seemed to just out of reach. Then, one rainy afternoon, a crumpled piece of paper, tucked away in a forgotten file, caught my eye. It was a barely legible receipt for a storage locker, dated just days before the incident at the docks. "Bob, look at this," I exclaimed, waving the paper in his face. His eyes widened as he squinted at the faded ink. A storage locker. Could be a lead. Hope, a flicker amidst the drudgery, ignited within me. We raced down to the dingy storage facility, the damp air clinging to us like a second skin. The locker, a rusty metal box at the end of a dimly lit corridor, held our breath. With trembling hands, I entered the combination and creaked open the door. Inside, nestled amongst dusty crates, we found a treasure trove of evidence: financial ledgers detailing illegal transactions, encrypted files hinting at a global network, and a single photograph. The photograph, grainy and faded, showed a group of men huddled around a table, their faces obscured by shadows. One figure, however, stood out, a tall man with a cruel glint in his eyes, a man I vaguely recognized from a charity gala photo I'd seen months ago. "That's him," I gasped, pointing at the man. "That's the one pulling the strings." Recognition dawned on Bob's face. "Marcus Thorne," he muttered, his voice laced with a dangerous edge. A powerful businessman with a reputation for discretion. Suddenly, the pieces clicked into place. The shell companies, the chemicals, the near poisoning. It was all part of a larger scheme, a web of corruption spun by a man who operated from the shadows, a man seemingly untouchable. "We need to expose him," I declared, a newfound determination burning in my eyes. "But how do you fight a ghost, a man who controls the shadows?" Bob, his face grim, patted my shoulder with a surprisingly gentle touch. "We expose the shadows, kid. One piece of evidence at a time. We make him a target, too big to hide in the darkness anymore." The fight ahead wouldn't be easy. Marcus Thorne was a formidable opponent, his power and influence a formidable barrier. But this time, we weren't just chasing a story. We were fighting for a city, for the truth, and maybe, just maybe, the lack of pain would allow me to persevere where others might falter. We would bring Thorne into the light, no matter how harsh the glare, no matter how deep the shadows we had to navigate along the way.